Congressman Fleischmann, I appreciate your coming today and being here in Cleveland. I know you've had a busy day already, and we appreciate you sharing your time with Cleveland Media Network. And how's your visit been so far?
It's been outstanding. I live right down the road in Ottawa, so over the years I've spent a tremendous amount of time in Bradley County, and we've just had a wonderful day in Bradley County, visiting with your elected leaders, and Cleveland State here has been outstanding, and it's just truly a pleasure to always come back.
Excellent. Well, excuse our makeshift studio here. We're actually in the President's conference room here at Cleveland State, and we're so thankful they've given us this space, but welcome. Tell us about your first 100 days. I know you celebrated that recently, or about to, and tell us about what it is to be a congressman for the first 100 days.
It's a tremendous privilege to represent the people of the 3rd District, including all of Bradley County. The first 100 days has been hard work. We basically passed a budget that was left over from the last Congress that was not done. 100th, 11th Congress did not pass a budget. We were operating under what we call continuing resolutions. That's no way to operate a household, a business, or a government. So fortunately, we were able to have significant budget cuts in fiscal 2011. And on top of that, we have already voted in the House to pass a budget for 2012, specifically the Ryan budget.
I know in our house, when we have more month at the end of the money, as they say, you know, you can't survive that way. So what efforts are you making in Congress to help with the budget, you know, not only next year, but, you know, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, to obviously get us out of that, you know, how many $1 trillion of budget or of deficit that we already operate under?
Well, you're right. We've got a major problem. In my first 100 days, I have voted myself for over $500 billion in budget cuts alone. But that's just the start of the problem. We have got a situation in this country where we're spending far too much money. On top of that, the money we're spending, 43 cents of every dollar we spend, we borrow. And that's the real danger. It's not a matter of just having a pile of money there that you can just say, let's spend it. If we did have a pile of money, I'd say it's the people's money, let the people keep it. But we don't. We are borrowing against our children and grandchildren's future, and that's wrong and it's unsustainable. So what I've done is several things. Obviously, we talked about passing a budget for 2011. I voted for a budget in 2012 that over 10 years would balance the budget, have $6 trillion worth of cuts, very, very substantial. But I think most importantly, I am co-sponsor of an amendment to the United States Constitution to balance the budget. We sorely need a balanced budget amendment to the United States Constitution. Tennessee balances its budget by state constitutional amendment. That's why we're doing so well in Tennessee. The federal government has to do the same thing.
Do you think it's a not a tragedy, but a you know, the situation that we're in financially? Is it something new to you? Is it something new to our government? Is it really gotten as bad as we think it has, to come to a point where there's, you know, something that needs to be constitutionally amended to get that balanced, I guess I should say?
I knew we had a spending problem, a deficit problem, and a national debt problem when I came to Congress. But after having been there and studied it more and heard about it more and lived it daily, it's a lot worse. It is a crisis, but we can fix it if we can come to the table and act in a fiscally responsible manner. And what that means basically is cutting spending. 1/3 of our federal budget is what we call discretionary spending, but 2/3 of it is mandatory spending. That means it involves Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. And rest assured, people 55 and over are safe. But we're going to have to look at the mandatory side of the spending equation to get some reforms in there so that these programs are available for the younger people and for future generations to come. If Medicare is left in its current fashion, in 9 years it'll go broke. We can't let that happen. But if you look at the way that things are in Washington, D.C., it's not a revenue problem. Revenues in terms of tax dollars and other revenues coming into the Treasury are fairly steady and will continue to be so. The real problem is spending, spending, spending. And the current administration just does not get that. And the liberal leadership in the Senate apparently does not get that. But the American people get that, and the people of the 3rd District sent me there to cut spending, and that's what I'm doing.
Speaking of the 3rd District, with all the proposals that are happening this year, now, today, tomorrow, the years to come, what does that look like for people here in Cleveland, Bradley County? How does their life different when these things pass?
Well, if we can get our fiscal house in order, the 3rd District, the people in Bradley County, and the people all over this great country will do better. Why? Because if we can get our fiscal house in order, we will be able to have real job creation in the private sector. That's the key. When we don't spend wisely, when we have deficits out there and the national debt is going through the roof, it takes capital away from the private markets, it hurts private industry, it creates an environment for business that's unpredictable. Once we cure this spending problem, this deficit problem, this national debt problem, we will see prosperity not only in Bradley County, across the 3rd District, and across the United States.
Sure. Sounds exciting. Cleveland Media Network is an online media outlet, and of course we use Facebook, as I know you do as well. And we had talked to some Facebook friends about what we should ask you. So here's just a couple, and we'll start with health care.
Sure.
First of all, what is Obamacare?
The health care, it's a disaster. In short terms, it's a disaster.
Why is it a disaster?
Okay. And let me say this. I campaigned on repealing Obamacare. That was my first vote in the House, was to repeal Obamacare. Basically, in my opinion, it's unconstitutional. A federal judge in Florida has ruled the entire bill unconstitutional. Some judges, one in Virginia, has just ruled one portion of it unconstitutional. So I'll start from that standpoint. But the legislature, my side, has ruled that and voted to repeal Obamacare. The problem was we needed real health care reform in this country, and what we ended up having was a government takeover of the health care system in a way that the American people did not want then, and they do not want it now. The bill was not read. When Nancy Pelosi said we've got to pass the bill to find out what was in the bill, that's a major problem. That's not any way for a legislature to act, to pass a law that they don't even read and know the contents. And we're finding out just what's in the law. It's a disaster. It's basically going to destroy the healthcare system in this country. It's going to hurt consumers. Rates are going to go up. Quality of health care is going to go down. But there is hope. If we can scrap that law and get back to real health care reform, which will entail tort reform, buying across state lines, or what we call pooling, health insurance savings accounts, private sector solutions. Again, we did have a health care problem in this country. We needed reform, but the reforms that President Obama and the liberals in the last Congress implemented will literally destroy the system.
So we do need the reform, but you're saying the reform is not through the government, is the bottom line I'm hearing.
Yes, the reform in the health care bill that was passed was basically something that hurts business, hurts the consumer, hurts the medical profession. I've had so many healthcare professionals tell me it's going to destroy our healthcare system, and it was not what the American people wanted. The American people stood up and said, no, wait, let's work through it. But the president, Harry Reid, and at that time Nancy Pelosi, just crammed it down the throats of the American people. It was my vow to make my first vote to repeal Obamacare, and I did that.
You have been very faithful, from what we've been reading, to do that. What is the next step? Where does it taken in the process as far as what does it take to repeal that? Is it a matter of votes, period, and that's it?
Well, more than that. Certainly, we hope that the courts ultimately upheld the Florida judge that says it's unconstitutional. That will work its way through the appellate system. If that's the case, it will be dead. Unfortunately, the Senate did not vote to repeal. So the House voted to repeal, the Senate did not. But what we have done already, I was co-sponsor of the 1099 repeal, which is already passed. That was that burden on businesses if they spent like $600 or more to have to do 1099s. It was going to hurt business across this country. We have voted to basically knock that out. That did pass. So if we can't knock out the whole law in one swipe, what we'd like to do, we can pick it apart and begin to defund parts of it, and that's the key. Unfortunately, as that bad law was drafted, there was about 105 or 106 billion in mandatory spending in that law, so it's been started down the bad path. So we've got to try to defeat it early, because the worst provisions over time will kick in future years, and we've got to knock it out before it gets that bad.
One last thing here. This comes from your website, I think, when you were actually running for Congress. This is what it says. You said that then. I assume you still believe this, and we have some people that were wanting to ask about it. And this is regard to values of our country. The first of these values is the value of human life. All human life is of value and is sacred. I believe that life begins at conception. I do not believe in abortion. I am opposed to the use of our taxpayers' money to fund abortions. And I know there were some people that were actually talking about funding for Planned Parenthood. And I guess so the question is, obviously, I'm sure you still believe in that statement. And what are you doing to influence our government in these issues?
One of my proudest votes that I cast in Congress was to defund or take the funding away from Planned Parenthood. So that was a big step in the right direction. Unfortunately, the Senate did not see it that way, but we actually forced a vote in the Senate. That was very, very important. They were not even going to take the issue up. We forced Harry Reid to take that up as part of the CR compromise. But this is going to be an issue that we will have to continue to revisit. Planned Parenthood and their liberal allies on the left are going to continue to fight to do what they do. I think they were wrong then, they're wrong now, and I do not think taxpayer dollars should be going to support that.
Okay. One last question. This is kind of a hard question maybe for you. We all make mistakes, both in our personal life and our professional life, and we learn from those mistakes. And what makes us different is if we continue to keep making those mistakes or not. So is there, since you've been a congressman, what mistakes have you made, and how have you learned from them?
I can't really point to any specific mistakes because I've listened to my constituents in the way that I voted. But having said that, I want to work to improve every day. If I could duplicate or replicate the first 100 days we've had in Congress, it would be an outstanding run. But I'm going to continue to learn from other people, from my constituents, from the private sector, from the business community, and try to always improve my skills as a congressman. I think I come to the table with very conservative fiscal and social values, and I think that's very, very important. I think the vast majority of people in the 3rd District agree with me on that, but I listen to the constituents in Bradley County and my other 10 counties.
Absolutely, that's great. I'm not sure if I want to answer that question either about my mistakes on camera, but I do know enough about you that what you said you were going to vote for, you have.
Thank you.
And that's very respectful. And we appreciate having you here, and we wish you the best, and we'll pray for your leadership, that you can continue to make changes that better the people for this country. So
thank you.
Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure to be here, and I will come back.
Thanks.